Welcome to another edition of the Business and Personal Podcast, where we bring you closer to the people you do business with. We're thrilled today to have Tony Gummo on. He's the owner of Medicare Answers for PA LLC. He's a licensed Medicare specialist, also a veteran. So on Veterans Day, we want to highlight our great veterans, thank them for their service. And Tony also has some great insights for Medicare knowledge that all veterans should know about. So first of all, Tony, thank you so much for your service and join us here on this Veterans Day podcast.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
So it's the Business and Personal Podcast. So give people a little bit idea of your background and what led you ultimately to where you're at now.
Well, I come from a military family. My grandfather was at Bastogne. He was a POW in World War II. My dad was in Big Red 1 in Vietnam in 65, 66. He was actually shot through the hips on an ambush. So that was always in my blood. You know, Western Pennsylvania, where I'm from, there's a lot of veterans. You know, a guy down the street was in the invasion of Normandy. So that's just been a part of me. And I took a different path because I was a little wild child, and when things got out of hand, I was smart enough to listen to God directing my steps, and He put my feet right on those yellow footprints in Paris Island. So that straightened me up.
Fantastic. So then, amazing family background and stories that you have. I'm sure we could go a whole podcast with you sharing all those great stories, but what ultimately led you into the Medicare world?
Well, after the Marine Corps, I became a trooper. I was a Pennsylvania State Trooper for 22 years. Bought my military time, so I retired kind of early, and my aunt and uncle, step-aunt and uncle, were in Medicare. And they would always mention it to me, and I'm not outgoing. I'm more reserved. I don't like talking about myself. And I said, I can't do that. And they said, Medicare people need someone they can trust with your background. And so they gave me the study material. I found it interesting, and I never looked back after that. You know, I helped them set up an office out in the central part of the state, and I'm blessed to have two careers that I loved. You know, I love being a trooper, and I probably love Medicare even more. Still get to serve people and help.
Absolutely. And, I work with so many Medicare agents, and it is amazing the service that you offer. I mean, nobody should even think about trying to navigate Medicare selection on their own. Especially with all these changes that have been coming down recently. And to be able to provide that service at no charge, it's just an incredible business that you offer there. And, I've had a lot of Medicare agents on this podcast. We've talked about a lot of different things Medicare related, but I haven't really had somebody on that knows a lot about the veteran benefits. That's why I'm excited to have you on here. So just from an overall perspective, what are some veteran benefits available through Medicare that a lot of people don't know about?
Well, I think it's the veteran community, they tend to stick with themselves, trust each other as far as the Legions, the AMVETs, the VFWs. So in that community, a lot of them, if their spouse has a Medicare plan, they may be on a Medicare plan, but most of them, if they are accepted into the VA, they use the VA system exclusively, it seems, and they're paying their Medicare Part B, which is everyone has to. But, there's so many more things, specific Medicare plans that they could take advantage of that are veterans related. If they're not, if they don't need the RX, traditionally the prescription Part D coverage through Medicare because they're using it through the VA, then they can go on to a Medicare Advantage plan that has no RX. And then there's benefits such as, even over $100 a month give back on a lot of plans on their Medicare Part B. Then it's more added value with dental, vision, and so forth. The lower co-pays because they're not costing the Medicare carrier with their prescription coverage because they're using the VA system. And then there's some pushback from the veterans, such as, well, then I can only use the VA. And that's not true, because the VA is a government agency, Medicare is a government agency, Medicare Advantage plans are private carriers. So even with the choice offerings that came through, a veteran can go and be treated in a local hospital, and it's a lot cheaper for the VA to help with that copay or pay those copays than to pay for the care of that veteran in one of their facilities. So it works, and it's designed to work together. And there's a lot of misinformation with the veterans along those lines.
Just awesome insight there. Yeah. And again, hopefully we're educating some people that didn't know about all that information. Now, well, how does Medicare look at someone to qualify as a veteran? What specific steps do you need to go to qualify as a veteran in terms of how Medicare looks at it?
Well, Medicare really, it's not gonna judge them. Even a lot of the carriers in, I'll say, Pennsylvania, if you're fortunate enough to have prescription coverage through your work or your spouse's work, you can even select just the Medicare Advantage only plan without the prescription coverage. If you're a veteran and you sign on one of those plans, you're just not going to have the Part D coverage. Okay, so there really isn't a criteria as far as Medicare specific. They're not asking for your DD 214s or your discharge papers. They're accepting your word that you are a veteran and you're enrolled in that plan, and that the VA is going to provide your prescription coverage.
And are all the key dates the same for the veterans in terms of annual enrollment, open enrollment, and whatnot?
Yes, it's all the same. Medicare dates, annual enrollment, open enrollment, then a special election period. That happens when, for whatever reason, if a veteran moves, he can enroll in a different health plan, or when they get accepted into the VA system and start receiving their prescriptions, in some cases that will allow them to enroll in a Medicare only plan. So there are, it follows the same general Medicare guidelines.
Are there some veterans that you've worked with, Tony, that used to try to do this on their own, and then they find you and you're able to find some new things for them? Have there been some instances where you've opened some eyes that people didn't realize some benefits were available to them?
Yes. A veteran from my church never was on Medicare. A bodybuilder and a health nut from the 50s. Doesn't even take any prescription drugs. So I meet with his second wife, and we're discussing her plan, and he's like, I just have regular Medicare, but I don't need it. Okay, you hear this a lot. I'm not, pushing people one way or another. I just want to, try to guide them and help people. Well, he is now battling skin cancer, and it's in his face near his eye. He's in the VA system. I did talk him to finally making that connection. So they are treating it, but there is a delay, just like every other doctor's office. So we went back, and I'm trying to tell him, okay, let's look at enrolling in a Medicare Advantage plan where there's doctors right down the street that could treat the specific. And here he has a penalty because he never enrolled in his Medicare Part B. So after we go through that, I said, I know you're a veteran. Have you any problems? Not any problems. I said, let's look at this Medicare Advantage plan where it was well over $100 give back on his Medicare Part B. So that actually made his penalty reasonable. It didn't bury him, because this gentleman's, mid 80s now. And so he has coverage. I actually see them in church quite often, and he's telling me, hey, everything's going well. They're taking care of, being treated at, such and such place. So that's, one of the misconceptions. And a lot of times these veterans just, oh, I go to the VA, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. Well, can you use $75 back a month? Can you use $111 back? Can you, what about dental? Yeah, that's expensive. Well, how about, $5,000, a yearly, coverage on your dental? Well, how do I go about, and then, that steers the conversation.
I just love hearing these stories like this, Tony. And when people open their eyes like that and they see all the savings and they're like, gosh, how much could have I saved years ago? If I would have known
Yes.
about Tony sooner. And, it's what's funny is people a lot of times probably want to pay you, but you're not even allowed to accept any money. Your services are free.
Correct. And a lot of times, the veterans plans are in the back of the book. And so even if, the spouse is on top of things, or the person at the senior center or their neighbor says, hey, I want you to enroll in this plan. Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds good. They don't even know that these are offered. And that's the sad thing.
So, obviously we've talked all about veterans here and you've planted your flag there. You want to be that guy that is the go-to for veterans for Medicare assistance, because not a lot of people do plant their flag there. And that's awesome. But just so people know, you work with anybody that's Medicare eligible, right? Not just veterans.
Oh, correct. Yeah, all Medicare eligible people. I did a lot of, those type of coverages, and that's, extra rewarding also, people that are, lower income levels, that I've met through the year through churches, soup kitchens, food banks. So yeah, any and all, then turning 65, they're more than welcome.
Fantastic. So, people that are still listening here certainly are interested in working with you, Tony. So what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch with you?
Well, my cell phone that I generally try to answer nonstop, and that is 724-331-8626. And my website, which is currently, it's revamping it, so to speak, but that is Medicare Answers 4 Pennsylvania.com. And there's generally links, my name, Anthony Gummo 4@gmail.com, or Tony at MedicareAnswers4PA.com.
So, hey, there you have it. You're getting Tony's personal cell phone number. Joe Namath and William Shatner, they don't give their cell phone numbers out on TV. You're getting Tony directly, so you're getting some accountability there.
Oh, the Joe Namath and Captain Kirk's, oh my God, what they've done to Medicare.
That's a whole nother podcast, Tony. We'll have to save that for another time.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, hey, thanks again so much for taking your time. I know this is the busiest time of the year for you, but with Veterans Day here, I really wanted to put a spotlight on what you're doing.
Hey, I appreciate the offer, and to any and all veterans, thank you for your service.